You know, there's a global war being fought right now, but not with armies or tanks. It's being fought with money. It's called a currency war, and believe it or not, it affects the price of almost everything we buy. In this explainer, we're going to break down what this battle is, how it's fought, and who, if anyone, actually wins.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's start with this simple but honestly brilliant idea. Just picture two shopkeepers on the same street. One of them slashes prices to steal some customers. The other one sees this, panics, and cuts her prices even more. Pretty soon, they're both in a race to the bottom, right? Well, a currency war is the exact same game, just played with entire countries.
Right, so let's stick with that image of the rival shopkeepers, but just scale it way, way up to the global stage. What happens when it's not two little shops we're talking about, but entire nations all competing on the price of their money? Well, that's exactly when we step into the battlefield of a currency war.
So here's the official term for it. A currency war, or what economists like to call competitive devaluation, is when a country intentionally makes its own money weaker. Now, you might be thinking, why on earth would they do that? It's actually pretty simple. To make everything they sell to the rest of the world, their exports, suddenly look a whole lot cheaper.
Okay, so that brings us to the really big question. How does a country actually pull this off? I mean, it's not like they can just go and put a 20% off sticker on their banknotes, right? So what are the actual economic weapons a country has in its arsenal when it decides to go on the attack?
Let's walk through a really simple example to see how this actually works in practice. So, step 1, imagine there's a shirt made in India, and it costs 100 rupees. And let's say the exchange rate is 1 rupee for 20 US cents. Now, step 2, India's currency gets weaker. The new exchange rate is just 10 cents for 1 rupee. The shirt still costs 100 rupees in India, but for a buyer overseas, the price is about to change a lot.
And boom, there's the magic trick. The price for the US buyer gets sliced in half, from $20 down to just 10. And think about it, nothing about the shirt changed. Not the fabric, not the quality, not the labor. The only thing that changed was the exchange rate. And that right there shows you the raw power of this strategy to make a country's products look almost irresistible on the global market.
So this sounds like a brilliant move, right? Just make your money cheaper and watch your exports fly off the shelves. But, and this is a big but, it's called a war for a reason. Taking this path is a really high-stakes gamble, because the potential rewards come with some incredibly serious risks.
And here is the huge trade-off that every leader has to weigh. On the one hand, yeah, the goals are pretty tempting. You get to boost your exports, maybe fix a nasty trade deficit, and give your whole economy a shot in the arm. But on the other hand, the risks are just massive. Your competitors can just retaliate and do the same thing, completely erasing your advantage. Plus, everything you import now gets more expensive for your own people, which can lead to inflation, financial chaos, and a total loss of trust on the world stage.
So let's move away from the theory and onto the real-world battleground. Because these aren't just ideas in a textbook. These exact tensions have defined how the world's biggest economies have dealt with each other for decades. And you can't have a conversation about this without talking about the big one. The tension between the US and China. For years and years, the United States has accused China of playing this exact game, of waging a kind of quiet, long-term currency war for its own benefit. So the core of the accusation is this, that for years, China intentionally kept its currency, the yuan, artificially low. And the goal was pretty obvious, make Chinese goods incredibly, unbelievably cheap and hyper-competitive all over the world. Now, this didn't just create friction with the US. It sent shockwaves everywhere, putting intense pressure on other big exporters, like India, especially in crucial industries like textiles and manufacturing. So where does a country like India fit into all this? Well, India's position is more like a constant balancing act. It doesn't usually start these fights, but it often has to play defense just to protect its own economic interests from the fallout.
India's central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, or RBI, is constantly active in the currency markets. It buys and sells foreign currencies to keep the rupee from getting too strong and making Indian exports too expensive. A perfect example of this challenge was between 2010 and 2013. Other big economies started using policies like quantitative easing, which is really just a fancy way of saying they created more money. This weakened their currencies, which in turn made the Indian rupee look strong by comparison. And while a strong rupee sounds good, it actually really hurt Indian exporters.
So when you see these power plays between the US and China and the defensive moves that countries like India have to make, it really brings us right back to our original analogy. You know, the one with the shopkeepers. When every single country is trying to undercut all the others, you don't really get a clear winner. What you get is a frantic race to the bottom.
I think this quote just absolutely nails it. A currency war isn't about running faster. It's this bizarre race where every runner is trying to deliberately slow down, just hoping it makes everyone else look even slower. And the end result isn't a victory. It's a stagnant, sluggish, global economy that's just full of distrust and instability.
So let's just pull it all together one last time. Key takeaway number 1. A currency war is really just competitive devaluation, a tool to get a trade advantage. 2, it's a massive gamble, trading short-term gains for very real long-term risks like retaliation and instability. And 3, as we've seen from Washington to Beijing to New Delhi, this isn't just theory. This is the reality of our modern global economy. And why does any of this matter to you? Well, because this single idea is woven into the very fabric of the global economy. It's directly connected to a country's trade balance, to the inflation you feel in your own wallet, to major disputes at the World Trade Organization, and even to the role of big institutions like the International Monetary Fund. It's a cornerstone concept you really have to get.
Which brings us to a final, really challenging thought. In a world as deeply interconnected as ours, where one country's policy creates ripples across the entire planet, is it even possible for a single nation to truly win a currency war? Or is it just a race where everyone loses, simply at a different pace?